Hello and welcome to IP Study video lectures. Today we are going to discuss chapter number 17 of grade 8 social science. The chapter name is Ideals of the Indian Constitution. In our previous chapter we discussed that constitution is a basic framework according to which a country governs. We discussed the importance of a constitution, and we also discussed that Indian constitution was enacted on 26 January 1950. It took about 3 years to frame our constitution. So the process started in 1946 and by November 1949 it was completed. But yes, we chose the date 26 January. We chose the date 26 January 1950 for the enactment of our constitution. And why is that? It is because before our independence, during the Lahore session of 1929, we ourselves declared that we are a Poorn Swaraj nation, that we are a completely independent nation. So this particular date, 26th of January, was very important in the hearts of Indian leaders, and we actually got our freedom on 15th of August 1947, but this date we wanted to remember and celebrate, so we chose that our constitution is going to be enacted on this particular date, right? So we also discussed about the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Preamble is basically the introductory document that tells us about the basic ideas, the basic principles which our constitution and our country believes in. Right? So, here is the statement of the preamble, which starts with the statement, "We the people of India." And if you look at the last line, it says that we the people of India give ourselves this constitution. So now we will discuss in brief the various ideals of our constitution. The first of which is the word socialist. This particular word was added to the preamble of the constitution in the year 1976 through the 42nd amendment. So originally this word was not mentioned in the constitution, but yes, because this ideal actually represented the vision of Indian leaders and our country, this word was later on added. So what does it mean? Socialist basically means that we believe in creating a welfare society where there is equal distribution of wealth among all the people. It does not mean that everyone will have the same income levels, but we are talking about opportunities here. We want to ensure that the gap between the rich and the poor in our country is bridged, that the rich do not get richer and richer and the poor do not get even more poor. So we want to ensure there is opportunities, there is economic and social justice in our country where everyone grows. It is not just the growth of few individuals in the country, but as a country we should grow and all the people in our country should grow with the growth of the country. Next term is secular. Now this word was also added through the same amendment, 42nd amendment to the preamble of the constitution. But yes, again it is an idea that our country has always believed in. India is a pluralistic country. By pluralistic we mean that there is multitudes of languages, religions and belief systems in our country. If you look at some other countries in the world, like you look at France, you look at Britain, you will see that they believe in one country, one language, one religion. That is the main idea. But for a country like India, we have always thrived on our diversity. So there are different religious groups, there are different ethnicities, different languages that are spoken here, different food, different clothing, everything is in large numbers. So to make sure that people of different religious groups do not feel that they are not a part of this country, they have always believed in the ideas of secularism, right? So secularism means that there shall be separation between the religion and the state. For this, it is important that the state does not interfere in the religious beliefs of the people. It shall be a matter of personal choice whether the person wants to follow any religion or not, or which religion that person wants to follow. So that is actually practiced in our country as well. Right. And of course, the state shall not discriminate among people when they are making their policies and programs. Our constitution also says that there is no state religion. In many countries around the world, you will see that there is a majority of one religion, and people of other religious groups are not free to practice their belief systems. But in our country, there is no state religion, so people are free to practice the religion of their choice. And not just practice, they can even propagate it, they can even profess it. So there is complete freedom among the people. And even if you talk about the minority, in our country the minority is safe. Minority means those religious groups which are less in number. So if you talk about India, we have about 75 to 80% of people who practice Hinduism, but there are Buddhists as well, there are Jains as well, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs. So all these people of different religious belief system are residing together in our country. Now, it's a very interesting topic that how Indian secularism is different from other developed countries. Let's take example of United States of America. We both are secular countries and we both take pride in being secular, but the manner in which we practice our secularism is quite different. You see, India is quite a spiritual country. Here, religion is a very important part of people's everyday lives. So, the separation between the state and religion is not as strict as in the case of USA. In USA, you will see that the state maintains a very clear distance from religious institutions, from religious groups, but in our country, from time to time there is some interference from the state in the matters of religion. A good example of this is how Indian Constitution has abolished untouchability. Now, untouchability was a social and a religious practice which was very unfair, where people from the lower caste were treated as unequals, treated as inferior groups. So, to make sure that the dignity of all the people is maintained, untouchability has been abolished by our constitution, and all our government institutions also follow this, right? So that is how we see Indian secularism is a bit different from USA, where from time to time there is some interference from the government. Moving to the next important ideal, and that is republic. India is a republic. By republic, we simply mean that it is the people of India that elect the head of the nation. Now, that is also same in the case of USA. But in USA's case, people are directly participating in those elections. When you look at India, we actually directly elect our MLAs and our MPs. So, member of Legislative Assembly and member of Parliament we elect directly. But it is these politicians, these leaders who elect the president of our country through electoral college, through the process of electoral college, right? So, it is an indirect election of the president in our country. But yes, we can say whether directly or indirectly, we actually elect the head of the nation. So that is why we are also a republic. Moving to the next topic, justice. Justice simply means fairness. We want to ensure that everyone is treated in a fair manner, that nobody is discriminated against, nobody is denied of any opportunities. So whether it is social justice, which means that there shall be no discrimination on the basis of religion, caste, gender, and so on. Whether it is economic justice, which simply means that there shall be equality of opportunities, especially for earning our livelihoods, or whether it is political justice, which means that we shall be able to participate in the political processes. If a poor person wants to stand for election and wants to become a leader, that person should have the opportunities as similar to any rich person or a son of a politician. So we want to ensure that there is justice in the society. Next important concept is of liberty. Liberty simply means freedom to do what we want to do. It is freedom of speech and expression, freedom to pursue the profession, the occupation of our choice, freedom to move anywhere and reside anywhere in different parts of the country. So all those freedoms which are actually important for the growth of an individual, so that is another important ideal of our constitution. So that is liberty. Next is equality. We have discussed many times that equality is a fundamental principle of a democracy. Without equality, you cannot imagine a democratic country, because equality ensures that there is equality before the law, that nobody is above the law. So, for democracy to sustain, we need that people should feel that nobody is superior to them or nobody is inferior to them. We all are equal, and only then we will have a feeling of belongingness for this country. So sense of belongingness is very important. We all should feel that all Indians are actually our brothers and sisters. We should have nice feelings for them, and this is established in the ideal of fraternity. So fraternity simply means brotherhood, that we should have good feelings about all our Indian fellows, Indian brothers and sisters. How is this ensured? Well, in our country, there is the concept of common citizenship. It is not the case that you have to take separate citizenship to live in Maharashtra and then for India, or say Tamil Nadu and then for India. In many parts of the world, within the same country, there is a concept of dual citizenship, where you have to be a citizen of the state as well and the country as well. But in our country, there is a concept of only single citizenship, because we want that Indians should feel that they can go anywhere, they can move to any part of the country, they can travel there, they can settle there, and so on. And also, we provide equal rights to all the people, whether it is the voting right or whether it is freedom, whether it is equality, all the rights are in equal proportion, and that also ensures that people feel a sense of belongingness, a sense of brotherhood among themselves. Alright, now that we have discussed some basic ideals of the Indian Constitution, we will discuss some key elements of the Constitution which are important for us to understand. The first of which is federal structure. Now, you might be knowing this, that our country, the government in our country works at more than one level. There is a central government, then there is state government, and then there is local government, which consists of municipalities and Panchayati Raj institutions. This is simply called the federal structure of the Indian Constitution, where the union government is looking after the needs of the whole nation, the state government is looking after the needs of that particular state, and the local government is looking after the local needs of the people living in villages and cities. The powers are also divided. If we look at our country, there is clear distinction among the powers of the central and the state government. The union list has all the subjects which are related to the central government. The state list has all the subjects that are related to the state government, and the concurrent list has all the subjects related to, well, not the local government, but these are the subjects related to both the center and the state government. So basically both center and state have to work together on these subjects. You might ask me why there are no subjects allotted to the local government. Well, the local government has been formulated in our country only recently. It's only after 1992 that regular elections were held at the local level, so it is still quite a new system for us. So it is the state government which actually shares some responsibilities with the local government, and when the constitution was framed, there was no concept of additional or separate powers for the local government. So center, state and local all have different responsibilities, but union, state and concurrent are the three main lists in which the subjects are divided. Alright, moving on. The second important principle is that of separation of power. See, earlier when we used to live during the times of the kings and the queens, it was the king who was deciding everything. He was making the new law. He was making sure through his ministers that those laws are being followed, and he was also the judge. Whether a person has done or wrong, he was ensuring justice. But in a democratic system, we need these powers to be divided, and these powers are divided in three organs or three branches known as legislature, executive and judiciary. Legislature actually frames the laws. The executive ensures that these laws are executed or enforced, and the judiciary makes sure that it interprets the laws or also safeguards the laws. So when the laws are made, the judiciary makes sure that these laws are right or not for the country, and it also safeguards the law, which means that if somebody's rights are violated, that person can go to the judiciary and seek justice. So this is how separation of power is done in our Indian Constitution. Next important concept is that India is a parliamentary democracy. A parliamentary democracy means where the parliament holds importance. How does this happen? Well, for this we will take the example of USA again, which is actually a presidential democracy. There is a election that is happening to elect the president of that country. But in our country, if you see, it is the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers who actually takes the important decisions who runs the government. So our country actually decided on having a parliamentary democracy because they felt it is more answerable, more accountable to the needs of people. How does this happen? This simply happens by understanding the fact that in the parliament, you see the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, who is his team, who is working with the Prime Minister, they all are answerable to the Parliament. So on a regular basis, the other people, the other members of the Parliament can question these people. They can question the Prime Minister. They can question those ministers holding important positions about their work. So there is more accountability in case of a parliamentary style of democracy, and that is why India chose to adopt it. Right. Alright, moving to the next very important topic, that is of fundamental rights. Now, fundamental rights are the basic rights which every individual needs just because he or she is a human being. Right? You don't need to pass any examination, you don't need to earn a certain amount of money. Just because you are a human being, you deserve all these rights. So they are very basic. They are human rights which every human deserves. So in our country, there are 6 such fundamental rights. The first one is right to equality. These rights are established from Article 14 to Article 18 of the Indian Constitution. So what are these rights? First of all, there is equality before law. We keep on discussing this idea. Equality before law simply means that nobody is above the law. For a similar kind of offense, you get the similar kind of punishment, right? So nobody is inferior or superior to each other. We all are equal in that sense. Then there shall be no discrimination among people on the basis of their gender, on the basis of their religion, caste, ethnicity, creed, or any other such variable, right? Then people should have access to all the places, public places we are talking about, and they should have access to public employment opportunities. So there shall be equality in all the regards, political, social and economic. Under right to equality, untouchability is also abolished. It was an evil practice that was practiced before independence, where the rights of certain groups, the so-called lower caste groups, were not there in the society. So to make sure that there shall be equality among all the citizens, this has been abolished. Another point under right to equality is that we are not allowed to receive titles from foreign countries, and even if we receive a title from our government, say somebody gets a Padma Shri or a Bharat Ratna, we are not allowed to use that title before our names, because that leads to inequality, right? So that is also there under right to equality. Right to freedom, a very important right, because if we want to truly express ourselves, we need freedom to say what we want. So freedom of speech and expression is important. Then freedom to profess any occupation, that is also important. Like we want to earn our money, so it should not be the case that you are forced to become a teacher or you are forced to become an engineer or doctor. You should have freedom to choose your occupation. Then you should have freedom to reside anywhere in the country. You should have freedom to move to any part of the country. So all those freedoms are very important if you really want to grow as an individual. Another important aspect under right to freedom is right to life and personal liberty. Now this includes a lot of freedoms: right to water, right to privacy, right to education. All of these come under this particular right. In fact, not only the rights of common people, but even the right of people who are accused of a crime is also protected under right to freedom. So unless you are proven that you are guilty, you are an accused person. So even rights of an accused person are provided in our constitution. Next is right against exploitation. Exploitation means when something wrong is done to another person, something unfair is done to another person. Some examples of this are human trafficking. Human trafficking simply means buying and selling of human beings. Yes, a very cruel practice. You would not listen about this practice in modern times, but in medieval India or around the world, this was practiced by many people. So human trafficking, child labor, yes, another social evil where children below the age of 14 are working, that is child labor. So that is also banned under this article. And forced labor. Forced labor means that you are forcing someone to work for you. So it could be a case that I am not able to, maybe I borrowed money from you or my father borrowed money from you, and because we are not able to repay that money, you are making me work, you are making maybe even my family work for you for free. So that is forced labor. So all these practices are banned under our constitution, under right against exploitation. Then comes, very important in our country, right to freedom of religion. We have discussed before that we have discussed before that India is a secular country. The state does not tell us which religion we have to follow. In fact, we have got the freedom to practice, propagate and profess any religion of our choice. And even if we also have freedom of conscience, if we feel we do not want to follow any religion, that is also allowed. There shall be no taxes on us for following our religious practice. Like if you look at medieval India, there were some taxes which were levied on people for saying they have to go to a pilgrim, or they have to do anything related to their religion, any activity, there were taxes on that. Our current government or our current system does not allow for any such taxes to be levied on people for practicing their religion, right? Next is cultural and educational rights. This particular fundamental right is specific for our minorities. Whether it is the linguistic minority, means people of different languages, or whether it is the religious minority, which means people following different religions, there is cultural and educational rights which allows them to open their own institutions, or it also gives them the opportunity to spread their ideas with other people, right? They are free to do so. And lastly, we have right to constitutional remedy. It simply means that we can approach the court, the different courts, if we feel that one of our fundamental right is violated. So all these fundamental rights are justificable, which means that if they are violated, and it is a duty of the state, basically the government, to ensure that your rights are protected. But if you feel your rights are violated in one way or the other, you can actually go to the court and seek redressal for that. Alright, we have done with the fundamental rights, and now we move to directive principles of state policy. It's a huge term, but it's a very simple concept, so listen carefully. Directive principles of state policy were the guidelines that were issued to the future governments by our constitution framers. So these are the basic guideline, means it is not compulsory that you have to follow them, but it means that these are the things that you have to keep in mind when you are making the new policies, new programs for the welfare of people, right? So to protect the needs of the people, our constitution framers added these added the directive principles of state policy from Article 36 to Article 51, making sure that people's rights were not violated. So these are basic guidelines which have to be followed by whether it is the central government, state government, or the local government. Whatever policies, whatever programs they are coming up with, they have to keep these guidelines in the back of their mind. And with that, we move to the last topic of this chapter, which is fundamental duties. You might have heard, with great power comes great responsibility. So your rights are your power, which the government is willing to give you. But what do you give in return? You give some kind of duties. There is some kind of duties that you follow to enjoy those powers in the right manner. So what are these duties? These duties are for your country. So now let us discuss these fundamental duties. First of all, it is abiding by the Constitution and respecting its ideals and institutions, national flag and national anthem. So to stand for the national anthem, to treat our national flag in the right way, saluting it in the right manner, and also to abide by abide means to follow all the principles that are listed in the Indian Constitution, which we discussed through the course of this chapter. So all this is part of our fundamental duty. Then cherishing and following the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle, our freedom struggle basically. So all the freedom fighters, we remember them during the times of Republic Day, Independence Day. Why we do that? And we don't only remember them, we also try to follow their ideals in our daily lives. So that is also a part of our fundamental duty. These fundamental duties were added to our Indian Constitution in the year 1976, the same year when the words socialist and secular were added through the 42nd Amendment. So what are these fundamental duties? You can go through this list. First of all, we have to abide by the basic principles of the Indian Constitution. The principles which we discussed in this particular chapter, those principles are actually not just part of one individual's belief. They are the belief system of all the freedom fighters that have served this country. So they are the ideas of this nation. Respecting the national flag, respecting the national anthem and other symbols, that is important. Following a scientific temper is important. Making sure that we are doing things which go for unity and integrity of the nation is important. Public property, preserving our public property and also our natural resources. So doing all these things where not only us as individuals are benefiting, but all the people and our entire country is benefiting. So doing all those things is part of our fundamental duty. It is important to note that unlike fundamental rights, these are not justificable, which means if you do not follow your fundamental duty, nobody can complain against you and send you to jail. But then again, it should come from within. It should come from your heart, from the love of your nation, that you are following all these fundamental duties. So I hope that we become good citizens after learning a chapter like this. We understand the principles and the ideals of our nation in a better way, and we become good and valuable citizens of this country. So I hope you enjoyed this video lecture, and we will meet again in our next video lecture. So thank you so much for listening.